This podcast is made possible by Planful.
Hi, this is David Bedell, the CFO of Lendio, and this is the CFO Thought Leader Podcast.
This is episode 830.
And, I think it's all about getting, quicker information to data so that you can help your business partners drive insights. So, what we're always after as a finance organization is to spend less time gathering the financial information and compiling it, and more time trying to drive insights to help our business partners and our enterprise to grow profitably.
Hi, it's Jack. On today's show, we speak with Sandra Rowland, CFO of water technology company Xylem. When Samsung acquired Stamford, Connecticut-based Harman International for $8 billion in cash in 2017, it was not the first time the South Korean company's appetite for Convergence IP had intersected with the career of Sandra Rowland, Harman CFO. A little more than 7 years earlier, Samsung executives had sat across the table from Rowland when she was head of corporate FP&A for Eastman Kodak. At the time, Rowland and the Kodak team was busily negotiating IP licensing deals with several smartphone manufacturers, including Samsung, that were eager to leverage what Kodak had amassed, an inventory of more than 1,000 digital imaging patents. These are just two snapshots from Sandra Rowland's exciting finance career. We have many more for you after this. Did you know more than 60% of B2B invoices are paid late? Well, then it should come as little surprise that the priorities of finance leaders have shifted towards accelerating cash recovery and scaling business growth. To address this issue, HighRadius now connects your credit, billing and invoicing, cash application deductions, and collections into a single business process and empowers your finance team to champion your business's high-performance culture. More than 700 of the world's leading companies have transformed the office of their CFO with HighRadius. Unlock working capital and reduce bad debt with the best AI-powered accounts receivable management software. To learn more, visit us at highradius.com. Hello, we're speaking with Sandy Rowland, CFO of Xylem. Sandy, welcome.
Thank you, Jack. Thanks for having me.
So, Sandy, we always begin with this question, which is to have our guests look back for us and identify some of those experiences they feel prepared them for a CFO role. What would come to mind for you?
Oh, boy. So, I think it's, first of all, it's really hard to believe that in 2023, that will be my 30th year as a finance professional. And to be honest with you, I'm really not sure where all the time has gone. But I think, as I reflect on the past 3 decades, there are, really two constants that come to mind. Number one is that I've always been learning. In every role that I feel like the learning has never stopped. And that makes things so interesting. And, secondly, I feel really privileged that I've been able to work with so many incredible people all around the globe who have taught me, unexpected things along the way. And we've worked hard and laughed together, and, the people have made it rich. But I probably would break down, Jack, my career into 3 tranches. In the first decade, I would say, was very much oriented around, accounting and auditing. I joined Pricewaterhouse right out of college. Back at that time, it was Price Waterhouse before it was PwC. And I think that first decade gave me a really solid technical foundation.
So geography-wise, where were you then?
So I actually started my career in the office in New Jersey, the Morristown, New Jersey office. And, after a couple of years, I transferred to the office in Rochester, New York. And at that time, Kodak was one of the flagship clients in the organization. And so I relocated to work on that assignment.
And I saw you got an MBA in upstate New York as well. I mean, are these things interrelated, or when do you get your MBA?
Yeah, that's a great question. I got it about 10 years into my career. So I had been working for some time. I went to an executive MBA program at Rochester, which the way it worked was I went to school all day on Friday and I worked in the office Monday through Thursday. And I think that was a pivotal experience for me. Because as I moved kind of into the, what I call the second tranche of my career, that's really where I branched outside of accounting and auditing. And I think I worked in every department in finance, with the exception of tax. And so I had experiences in treasury, investor relations, corporate FP&A, strategy. And I think it was really, rounding out all of those bases that gave me the real opportunity to take on my very first public company CFO role.
Yeah, no, we want to get there with you, but I have to go back. I let it slide earlier. You had mentioned Kodak as becoming one of your accounts, and that had to have been a coveted account. That was a marquee account. We forget the size this company once was, and clearly in the 90s, it was still a giant. So yes, or you want to correct me?
Oh yeah, it was a flagship account. It was, that was back. I started there in working on that account in the late '90s, and they were a brand that probably had more locations than McDonald's at the time. They were everywhere. And to be honest, I was there for some time. I joined the company. I actually, after I left Price Waterhouse, I went and I worked for Kodak, and I actually joined the company the year that film stopped growing. So that was and I think I knew that going in, and the company knew that going in. They were trying to make a massive pivot into digital, and that was a very, very hard shift. But as a finance professional, when your back is against the wall and you're managing through a financial crisis, I mean, I would say that's a period in time where I may have learned the most. But I joined Kodak in 2000 and I left in 2012. So I was there for a good chunk of time. I say, I spent my 30s at Kodak.
Yeah, I want to point out, given that span of time, you arrived at Kodak as an accountant, and you come out the other side as really a full-fledged corporate development executive with bona fides, and of course that's the role you step into next. But would that be fair to say? And how does that happen exactly?
Yeah, one of the rotations that I did at Kodak was serving the M&A team. And so, I had really the great opportunity to rotate around and see a lot of different areas. And, I was fortunate to have supervisors at the time, bosses at the time, who believed in rotation and forcing you a little bit outside of your comfort zone. So it really felt like, during a stretch of that period, every couple of years I was rotating onto a different assignment. I like to say, just as I got comfortable in a position, it was time to rotate off and try something new. Of course, I had the foundational knowledge of the company at that point in time. Was just really broadening my skill set within the financial domain.
From what you shared with us, it sounds like Kodak really did rotate its talent and open doors to develop people. At the same time, I want to ask you about a time maybe you raised your hand and, asserted yourself saying, hey, I'm in. I want this. Is there a time during your time at Kodak that that was the circumstance?
Yeah, so I was the head of corporate FP&A, which is, I really call that role the glue of the finance organization. You're connected with all the functional finance leaders, and you're also connected to all the business CFOs. And so, I had that foundational knowledge of the company. And, I helped in that role with a lot of the board preparation and work. And so, when the head of investor relations moved on to a bigger opportunity, I actually raised my hand and asked for the opportunity to try to try something new that really leveraged what I knew. I knew the numbers like the back of my hand. I knew the strategy. But then it's it takes a little bit of experience on how do you interact with investors, how do you tell the story externally. And I think just like anything else, a little bit of practice makes perfect, and you get a little better at it. And I think it was in that role I learned the power of communications. And myself individually as an employee, I'm not somebody that needed a lot of communication. But I learned that there are many others in the organization that really need that type of communication. And so a lot of the work you do for investors then trickles down and becomes, a big part of the script that leadership uses with its employees.
Meanwhile, Kodak is really in this transformational chapter the entire time you're there. It is just going down new avenues and searching out new opportunities as it reinvents itself. I mean, what is there something you could share with us that would reveal that more or less?
Oh, one of the priorities at Kodak was to monetize the intellectual property. Kodak was the inventor of the digital camera. And when the cell phone manufacturers started to incorporate camera technology into the phone, that created an opportunity to monetize the intellectual property. And I was, a core member of that team, and that provided, a key funding source, which helped to prolong the life at Kodak.
And involved in that, there were discussions with smartphone manufacturers who would.
Exactly. We negotiated licenses with the likes of Samsung, which is ironic because they came and acquired Harman down the road. Motorola, Panasonic, big companies that incorporated the camera technology into the smartphone.
Isn't that interesting? I remember Apple went to Corning for the glass on their smartphone, and they might have pulled over into Rochester to go get some digital camera technology too. I don't know that to be the truth. I'm just pointing out that they went shopping in upstate New York in search of the intellectual property required to create the smartphone. Meanwhile, you mentioned Harman, which is where you go next, and the Samsung acquisition of Harman. But did that happen before you arrive, or?
No. So I joined Harman in 2012. In October 2014, I was announced as the next CFO, and I served as the CFO of Harman while it was a public company until 2017. And in March of 2017, we were acquired by Samsung, and as part of that transaction, the Samsung team asked our key leaders to stay because they were new to the automotive space. And so at that time, I committed to staying for a 3-year transition period and serve as the CFO of Harman while it operated as, a standalone independent subsidiary of Samsung. And after I served out that period of time, I did want to go back and become a public company, CFO again.
Well, I got it. So now I'm getting this now, and perhaps you can help. For those of us, I visited the Harman site, and I was trying to understand the technologies that it's involved with, and it seems like now we were just talking about the digital camera technology at Kodak, and Harman is really known for its connected car technology, which is like all the audio and lighting solutions that you find in your automobile, those types of technologies that are all becoming digitized. I would think that when your resume hit the desk, that like, wow, here's someone who's involved in some of the licensing. And you tell me, I mean, aren't the worlds similar in certain respects?
Yeah, I mean, there is a lot of conversion in automotive technologies and consumer technologies. People want the same experience in the automobile that they have, with their smartphones at home. And so, I think there was a lot to leverage there. Um, and, of course, that was one of the reasons that Samsung bought Harman. They're looking for an area for growth. They didn't play in automotive, and it's a big industry. And they see the cell phone technologies and the sensor technologies, all coming into the car. And that was really the catalyst behind the transaction.
Well, just to mention this again, it does look like you were a great match for Harman, given the nature of its business and what it's doing. I mean, was it just that simple? Your resume lit up and said, "Yes, this is the person," or what transpired really?
Yeah, actually, to be honest, I was recommended to Harman by one of the board members that I had previously worked for. So, the power of relationships is really important. And so I actually went back and took a role. I took a role at Harman in Investor Relations, which is a role that I had previously had. But it was time for me to join another enterprise, and I was looking for a company with true growth potential. And so I came into Harman as the vice president of investor relations, and as part of that, part of my responsibility there, I had to understand the company's strategy extremely well. And so there's a high correlation between investor relations and the company's strategy, and connecting that with corporate development, which at Harman covered both sort of the execution of M&A transactions as well as the corporate strategy work. And so I was really fortunate. I spent the first 6 months really focused on investor relations, and then they expanded my role to cut across and cover corporate development. So it was a pretty heavy package, and I think somewhat of a test to see if I could handle it. And it really paved the way when you combined, that experience that I had at Harman with some of the other experiences I had in my prior companies. I think they took a chance on me as an internal promote into the CFO role.
Yes. Well, some great career insights for us every step of the way, Sandy. So thank you for those. And we now want to find out about Xylem, which is the company you join after 5 years occupying the CFO office at Harman. You join Xylem, enter the CFO office directly this time. It's an interesting company specializing in water technology. There's a lot to that. Perhaps you can fill us in. But let's begin with this question. What does this company do, and what are its offerings today?
Yeah, Xylem is a really interesting company. First of all, one thing that I'd love the listeners to appreciate is truly an enterprise that is focused on creating both economic and social value, and that's a hard thing to balance as a public company. And one of the things that makes us unique is that we really play in all parts of the water sector. And we have some, very strong and powerful legacy products related to pumping and transporting water, as well as metering water. And we're also marrying those foundational legacy products with digital technologies to help solve water problems, whether it's the affordability of infrastructure, the affordability of solutions, climate change resiliency. And so, there is so much going on in the world right now, between droughts and floods. We see incredible opportunity for growth and incredible opportunity to create both economic and social value.
So, and again, over 5 billion in revenue.
Yeah, we're just over 5 billion in revenue. We have aspirations to grow and hit each rack up and get close to $10 billion. I think we have tremendous opportunity to grow both organically, and if you look at the water sector, it's quite fragmented, and so that brings opportunity for Xylem to go on and make additional acquisitions to further round out and broaden the portfolio.
So to help us understand the business, we always like to ask for your top of mind metrics. Every finance leader from a different industry might have another set of metrics. What are yours? What do you look at before your first cup of coffee?
Yeah, great. Great question, Jack. I think we, as an enterprise that's focused on creating both economic value and social value, we have a set of metrics that cut across both spectrums. And so, we are a publicly traded company. So revenue growth matters, margin expansion matters, free cash flow matters. And so, we have robust conversations and intense conversations looking at those metrics and taking corrective actions when we're not on track. And we also monitor how we're doing against some of our longer term sustainability targets. We have sustainability targets that go out towards 2025. We're not going to hit them unless we make progress in 2022, in 2023, in 2024, and 2025. And so, we have milestones that we've set along the way. And we talk about them. We talk about both our economic metrics and our sustainability metrics in our monthly financial reviews.
Was sustainability metrics part of the Harman world or not really?
It was a part of the Harman world. With the product offerings we brought to market, we wanted drivers to be connected, but to do it in a safe way. So their hands on the wheel, their eyes on the road. And certainly electronic vehicles were growing in prominence. But I think Xylem is a little more advanced, and in that sustainability is really offered into the entire fabric of the organization. And of course, look, sustainability, sitting on a public company board as well, companies are making great progress in sustainability, and that's what we need as leaders.
As an accountant, as a top FP&A people, just going back in time with your career ladder, you've had all these different roles, and now as a finance leader, what we're trying to discover is whether your lines of sight, given the digital transformation, whether you're able to see numbers quicker, sooner, you're able to see new numbers or business measurements. What's your opinion? I mean, do you think this role has changed very much from the person who had it 10 or 15 years ago and sat in your chair? Were they looking at different metrics? What's really changed here?
I'm not sure that all the metrics have changed. I mean, 10 years ago, I can't imagine having sustainability metrics getting discussed on a regular basis in an operating review. That has changed. From a finance professional, some of the foundational work that we continue to do, whether it's setting budgets or setting the long-term plan, none of that has changed. But certainly the tools that are available to us as finance professionals, I mean, that is changing at record speed. And I think it's all about getting quicker information to data so that you can help your business partners drive insights. So, what we're always after as a finance organization is to spend less time gathering the financial information and compiling it, and more time trying to drive insights to help our business partners and our enterprise to grow profitably.
We're interested in learning your thinking when it comes to FP&A talent and how to deploy it, and whether at Harman you adopted some approaches that you use today, or maybe you're doing things differently? Anything you can share regarding FP&A talent and how to deploy it?
Yeah, super. I would share that, I think that when I joined Xylem, I was really fortunate to have, an incoming strong and committed team. And I think that working for a company with such a compelling purpose and mission, gives us a competitive advantage when it comes to recruiting talent. But one thing that I did notice when I joined Xylem is that we had a number of our team members who had served in their roles for what I would call an extended period of time. And, while this served us well from a continuity perspective, after seeing some of the benefits in my own career from job rotation, I've been working with my leadership team, to broaden the finance organization and to give our leaders new experiences. And this could be anything from supporting a new business or product line, or to even moving into a new function. And I think the other thing that I would share is that the finance team that I inherited had been really innovative in integrating our finance strategy with sustainability. So, as an example, Xylem was the first industrial company to issue a green bond. And I really wanted to ensure that we continued to build on that momentum. And since I've joined Xylem, we've announced two really important initiatives. One is a program where we partner with an organization called C-Note. And, that enables us to invest a portion of our cash reserves in underserved communities, giving those communities an opportunity to make, important strategic investments. And we've also invested a portion of our cash reserve, in demand deposit accounts, where the return that we get is tied to our published sustainability targets. And I think, giving our colleagues new opportunities through rotations, it creates innovation.
Wow. The sustainability milestones, and I think you just shared some. I'm wondering, as you look forward, what's the next sustainability milestone we should expect Xylem to achieve?
Yeah, I think I'll give you one example, one that we're working hard on, and that is, we operate, several manufacturing centers around the world. And, we're moving and migrating all of our manufacturing centers to have 100% water reuse in our own facilities. And, then our manufacturing locations can become flagship locations for selling those solutions to other industrial companies. And so, not all of our plants today have 100% water reuse. And as we think about moving to 2025, we have a path to migrate each one of those plants to get there. And I think, one of the unique aspects, of serving as the finance leader is, we have the ability to unlock capital. And so I was in an operating review, and one of our locations had a plan to implement these types of technologies that are necessary to drive to water reuse. But they were running into a logjam getting capital approved. And, I had the opportunity as a CFO to unlock that. And so it's a big part of my job every day to balance the paradox between our economic objectives and our social objectives.
I want to quickly touch on talent with you. I'm wondering, it's a strange environment right now economically, and hiring, though, in many sectors remains challenging. Is that the case with you folks? And what is as a finance leader, have you adopted sort of a new talent mindset since the pandemic?
Yeah, I mean, I think, the pandemic has changed so many things. And, we have a global workforce. And, I think what all of our employees are telling us around the globe is the importance of flexibility. And so, in most of our locations, we've adopted a hybrid model. Our teams, did such a good job in the periods where we didn't want people coming to the office, that we're continuing to give that flexibility to our team members. We do think that there certainly are some benefits of working together and collaborating, and therefore, we are trying to pull people back a little bit more and get them to come to the office, particularly when we have projects that require a high degree of collaboration or have a high degree of complexity, and just sitting and hashing it out in the same room is important. And, I'll tell you, Jack, my own experience is, I joined Xylem, an enterprise with 16,000 employees. And initially I had to learn the company through PowerPoint and Zoom. And it's really been refreshing over the past several months to really start to make my way around the globe and, see our products in action and, meet the people that are making it all possible, face to face. That's been really energizing.
Well, we're up to our finance strategic moment question. And this is where we just ask our guests to supply us with one moment of strategic insight they've experienced along the way. Again, it might be where you avoided a risk or pursued an opportunity, but your lines of sight as a finance leader allowed you to have that aha moment and experience what we refer to as a finance strategic moment. Anything come to mind when we ask for a finance strategic moment?
Yeah, I mean, I think, Jack, if you asked me that question in 2019, I probably would have referenced the financial crisis where, things happened so quickly and moved so fast, and all of a sudden you saw, a massive shift in your business. But, it's really nothing like what we experienced at the onset of the pandemic. And at the time, I was the CFO of Harman, and our plants were shut down for, about 3 months, at least 12 weeks. And so, we saw a revenue decline in April 2020 of something like 70%. And so that required us to be incredibly nimble and, to really batten down the hatch at tremendous speed. I think there are so many learnings that have come through the pandemic, whether it's the initial period or all the aftershocks. But as I think back, that was probably the most intense period.
Hi, it's Jack. I hope you're enjoying our talk with CFO Sandra Rowland. I have a fast fact for you. Did you know that Kodak developed the digital camera, the first digital camera, in 1975? But the product was dropped in fear that it would threaten Kodak's main income, which of course was its film business. So it's one of those innovator dilemma types of anecdotes. But flash forward to the early 2000s and the smartphone is being born and the digital cameras are just being eclipsed. It was time to sell the patents and make what we can off of this. One might believe a lot of thought went behind which executives to have seated at that table when those licenses were being negotiated at Kodak. They needed that revenue. They needed that funding. Sandra Rowland got the nod. We now return to our episode. As always, thank you for listening. We're going to jump to our mentoring round now, where we ask you several quick questions intended to inform and inspire future finance leaders. We want you to think back to your first 30 or 60 days when you stepped into the CFO role at Harman. We're looking for that first CFO experience that you had. We're wondering if you could go back in time, if you would give yourself a piece of advice, knowing that was the month, that was the quarter where all the responsibility first fell on your shoulders, the CFO responsibilities. And any piece of advice you could go back in time and give yourself, what would it be?
Yeah, it's really interesting. So, I became CFO of Harman in January 2015. And, typically the first major interaction I would have had with investors in that role would have been the earnings call. And we actually made, two transformational acquisitions that we closed on the same day. And so my first formal call with investors was, announcing pretty significant transaction. And so I had previously served as the head of investor relations and corporate development. But this time now is in the CFO role. And, it was a really powerful experience. And those transactions were a big part of, Harman's transformation towards, a more digital company.
Yeah. Hey, was it a relationship or a recruiter, or what brought you to Xylem?
Yeah, I think I think a really interesting story, and I'll go back a little bit in time. One of my mentors, who was actually a fabulous woman that I had worked for, and she was once speaking to our women's network. But of course, this advice applies to everyone. And she said that someone is always watching you. And so being present in the moment and delivering outstanding results, it's going to, lead to outstanding opportunities. And so, I did have a connection with a board member when I joined Harman. And, going back in time, I actually worked for the person who preceded me as the Xylem CFO. So I worked for him both at Price Waterhouse and at Kodak. And he, when he knew he was going to retire, he introduced me to the management team and the CEO. And, we also shared investment bankers. And so, it's a very small and connected world. And so I've been fortunate that, all the roles I had, outside of my very first job after I graduated college, there was always a connection to someone that I had previously worked for. And so it's just a reminder that, relationships matter. And as we have longer careers, there's, more and more opportunity to build and strengthen those.
And if I can, I'll just mention you're a board member at Oshkosh Corporation today as well. There might be other board seats, I don't know, but is that accurate?
Yeah, that's correct. I've been serving as a board member at Oshkosh, not the children's clothes manufacturer, the commercial, the leader in commercial vehicles since 2018.
Yep. All right. Well, we also like to have our guests reflect a little bit on the personal side for us. Sandy, we're wondering if there's something you can tell us about yourself, a personal habit or a daily routine that you have. We're really looking for something maybe outside the office as well, something a family member might point out that, that's just Sandy. That's how she does it. This is part of her daily routine, or like I said, a habit maybe. Anything come to mind when we ask for a personal habit or daily routine?
Yeah, what I probably would tell you is that, I think to be honest, I'm a bit of a grinder, if you will. I've always really had to work really hard, both as a student and as a professional. And I think that has helped along the way. But I think people would probably tell you that I have, a natural curiosity, and I ask, a ton of questions. And, maybe that stems from my very early days as an auditor. But I think going deep and constantly learning, makes you a better leader. And, it really leads to sometimes to some, unexpected ideas.
Okay. Well, we're up to our final question, where we're going to ask you to look forward finally for us, just 12 months, but we're wondering what your priorities as a finance leader are for the coming 12 months. What would those be?
Yeah, well, I think one thing that we've learned for sure is that, the next 12 months is a longer period than we used to think about it. So I think over the past few years, we all learned that we had to be, extremely nimble, even when we're thinking out, just 12 months. I'd say the number of unexpected challenges that have been thrown, at our teams is just incredible. And, at Xylem, we've been just incredibly proud of the team and how they've persevered and continued to take care of our customers over this, this period of, global turmoil. And we have very ambitious goals to create both economic and social value for our stakeholders. And so, I'm going to be working to delivering how we deliver on those goals, and all the actions that we need to take to move the enterprise forward.
Sandy Rowland, thank you for joining us on CFO Thought Leader.
Thanks so much for having me, Jack.
Hello, listeners. Do us a favor. Be certain to subscribe to CFO Thought Leader on Apple Podcasts, or if you're an Android user, check us out on Spotify or Google Play. If you liked the show, please recommend it to a friend.